Hello, I'm Chris Williams, an accelerator at Spiritual Acceleration.
I'm Tracy
And this
McPhee,
is
also an
Tracy
accelerator.
McPhee. And yeah, we're just here to have a little sort of chat about the Awaken the Shaman training, which is coming up at the end of October and it's running for 2 weekends, one in October, one in November. So I thought we'd just introduce the course a little bit and share sort of what it is. So it's a shamanic training in learning to contact, bridge, track, and move energy. So it's a functional course about sort of being able to track and move energy, and it's moving energy in sort of other people. So we're going to be learning in our group with our classmates initially how to track emotional wounding and clear it, but also how to bridge our awareness into other realms. And we're going to be working a lot with nature realms and the elements, because that's part of the nature of this sort of shamanic kind of path, is that there's a strong relationship with the natural world around us. Those are the energies that we're encountering, that we're sort of custodians of, and that we're working with for healing and sort of guardianship. So, Tracy, you mentioned something I really kind of I like the way you put it, that actually these are sort of natural functions. What is it about that you were sort of pointing to?
Well, for me, when I think about sort of awakening the shaman, it's kind of more like about just being fully alive, being able to engage with the experience of being alive as a human being. And I kind of, I think that we mentioned that like our natural senses, the senses that we're aware of and that we use every day, like our, smell, how to breathe, these things that happen naturally. That for me, the things that we would call kind of like shamanic abilities are just as natural and as easy and as part of us, essentially, as those, like the sense of touch, taste, smell. But just that we've managed to find them covered and buried. And for me to be fully alive, I wanted to have access to all of these senses. And also as like my journey, like the work of Bonnie and everything came into it, thank goodness. But I found that it was like quite amazing. The healing was amazing, the clearing was amazing, the teachings, the high level teachings, amazing also. But it was kind of like something outside of me and quite abstract. And amazing and extremely exciting, but not necessarily essential to my life as a human being. But then when I awoken to Awaken the Shaman, that's when I realized it could bring something into me and something that's alive in me every day and part of my just lived experience. And that's what, to me, being a shaman is. It's being a fully alive human.
That's very beautifully put. I really like that sense of really being sort of embodied and alive here, sort of through our humanness and through the sort of land around us as well, sort of our relationship with Gaia and beings. Oh, Susan's here. Hello, Susan. Really good to have you here. My bird. I guess that in sort of I like the way that you put sort of that these are natural functions and gifts that sort of get suppressed, because I think that's very true. And it's funny that we all have these senses and a language for them, but somehow culturally there's not a place for it, and it sort of gets squished to the side. But yeah, that's what we're going to be doing is opening up these senses, and it's very nice to do it with nature, energy, and consciousness, because something in us recognizes that it's safe. We can actually open to nature and interact with it. Humans can be a bit chaotic and messy, but it's nature is quite it's a natural expression of the divine, and it doesn't have human baggage, so it's good fun to connect to. On the other hand, nature also carries a lot of human sort of imprinting and baggage and wounding. All of the suffering of humanity is sort of stored in the planet in sort of different layers of the planet's own kind of field in different nature realms, and it's part of our responsibility to clear it up, the same way that it's our responsibility to sort of address the ecological, environmental sort of crisis that we're in, and sort of our relationship with the planet and the exchange that's going on. So I think that's an exciting area of this kind of work. And it's actually an area that sort of opened it for me. So when I was a young magician, when I was more at the beginning of my path, I got some really good advice from someone that was to go out into nature and also to take care of it. So if there was rubbish, go and clean it up. If there's something that needs fixing, go and do it. And I found that by doing that, it really opened a relationship with the land and these sort of sacred places. And then these beings would present and take me on sort of journeys into Gaia, into nature consciousness. You know, I end up becoming like just being taken in vision and becoming all these deer running through the woods and really sort of intimately becoming part of them, or meeting these sort of nature beings that lived under streams or in the sea. And I was on holiday in Bali recently, just doing some traveling, and the nature stuff all really shows up when you're present to it and you're open to it and you're respectful. You know, I meet the local land spirits and sort of I've got some good stories, but that I think is part of my sort of opening to this stuff was through nature consciousness, because it's a bit more easy for us to relate to than sort of some of the other frequencies and beings in other dimensions. We actually have a historical relationship. So in the UK, there's a lot of relationship with fairy consciousness, and fairies are quite easy to talk to in the UK because of that. There's a relationship with human sort of consciousness developed over time. In other places, I'm not sure it would be quite the same. I think other nature spirits in different places have a better relationship with humanity. You know, the people tend to have a certain relationship, and it can be a bad relationship too. Like I think that probably when people settled in America, and they would have been it would have taken a while to. It's like there would be no contact with the nature spirits there. That's still probably developing. So the native peoples probably had a closer relationship, but you have to build these relationships over quite a while for the other beings to get used to you. So it's a cool area of the work. Susan has just said, looking to join, have enough already. So today's just a sort of introduction kind of talk, and we'll be doing a Q&A next Friday. So if there are questions, submit them, and we will stick them in the chat now.
I think what's fabulous and what's like a recommendation for joining the course as well is because we never make space. And I think it's not even like, yes, there is a remembrance of if you want to call them gifts or these natural abilities that we have, but it's really, for me, it's about making the space for it and like being in the right container for it, because I feel like as much as wounding or whatever we're carrying, it's just purely the busyness of life that's causing this kind of perceived disconnect to these abilities. And for me, when I'm in kind of like my shamanic mode, as I feel it, I get a real sense of like, it's almost like humans and like busyness and the city and things kind of fall away, and they become I'm very much closer to seeing that as illusionary. But what remains true to me is myself, my divine connection, and the elements and trees, and yeah.
I love
so I
it.
think like a stillness, a calming down, a dedication to the space. And I also believe regardless if you've done Awaken the Shaman once, twice, 3 times, 100 times, I'm still very much looking forward to this as my growth and my next steps in my awakening, because you'll never stop deepening that relationship and deepening those experiences.
That's beautifully put. I think that's one of the themes that sort of like keeps showing up for me, is this sort of sense of deepening. So there's a deepening of how we can bridge our awareness into these energetic realms and into the human energy system. So we're getting sort of the capacity just to track and go deeper with what's presenting in front of you and really get a sense of it, get your awareness into it, so you can begin to work with it. It's something that continues. And the other thing that I sort of heard behind what you're saying is kind of heart, that for you, there's a sense of that somehow the kind of your path, which is sort of the path to the divine, but also including all this nature stuff, sort of deepens you in heart, which I think is actually a really beautiful quality in sort of our relationship with Gaia. Is actually there's this wonderful sense of heart and nurturing. Sort of like all of life is kind of arising as a holding, as a sort of like we're all being sort of nurtured and held by it, and it's a quality I think that we're becoming attuned to as we work with it. And that's an exciting thing on this course that I'm looking forward to go into, is sort of like kind of that getting people into channeling that kind of Gaia energy or Gaia magic to transform things, because Gaia is a being, like you might say she's an 8th dimensional being on her own pathway, but she's a divine expression as well, like all of creation, and she's part of our sort of local the local kind of, in a big way, the local arising of all life. And working with her energy is something we're doing in this course as a way of grounding that higher dimensional stuff into here and now in a kind of way. Her energy is very nurturing and grounding. So we're going to be learning to sort of channel that for healing and work with trees, the energy of trees and nature beings. So yeah, we'll be meeting the fairies and working with them, landing on the sea and some of the beings that work there as well. So those are some of the contacts.
Trees are my absolute favorites, and I think sometimes, you know how people say that they like prefer dogs to humans? I completely don't. But I do most definitely prefer the company of trees to the majority of humans. In fact, actually, sorry, but just like to all humans. And I think that what might be part of that, or kind of central to that, is there is a school of thought that like after the fall of like Earth as it was, like Lemuria or whatever we want to call it, that the trees were the only thing left that like retained their full remembrance, and that they hold the keys of that. And for me, that really resonates. And that's something that when I look and engage with a tree, I really do get a sense of that whole remembrance, and almost like a sight of a pathway back. That's how it kind of appears to me.
Nice. That's very cool. Yeah. They certainly have a very sort of deep resonance with stillness and kind of a connection to life. Kind of like they're sort of deeply connected to life. And they've got that sort of, so they've got that sense of really, I mean, in a very clear sense, trees manifest this kind of connection between heaven and earth in a very clear way. They have this, especially like if you look at pine trees, they're just stretching up like these giant antennas, just sort of like resonating with all this cosmic kind of chi, and their roots just going crazy far down.
Just obviously grounded.
Yeah, so they're a really good model for sort of energetic development. You want to become kind of like a tree, like you're like a tree, and your roots kind of extend very deeply into this sort of connection with Gaia energy and Gaia life, and your branches are sort of attuned to higher dimensional frequencies, and you allow this sort of rich interplay of the cosmos to happen through you. And what it's happening through is a sort of still presence, which is able to mediate and bridge all of that. So that's sort of, I think, getting in touch with the tree resonates. It remembers us into that, because that's our natural state too. We're also part of Gaia life and kind of that expression of the divine. But yeah, I think the way you put that is so gorgeous. So yeah, let's definitely, we'll be working with some trees. We might do a little sort of exercise video just to release next week about how people can begin to work with trees. I think that sounds fun. And we might, keep tuned. We might do some interactive stuff in the run up to this course, because it's nice to be practical. So we might go on a journey into nature consciousness. We could do that on Zoom. Let's do that in a couple of weeks' time. Yeah. But we'll put an invitation out. And Susan's asked some questions. So Tracy, I'm going to ask you these. And Susan, they have Hawaiian fairies that are like tiny warriors. So that sounds really cool. I need to go and check that out. That's really, really cool. So they've got their own warrior fairy energies. Yeah, sounds really wild. I wonder if they like to play with humans or whether they're more frosty. So Susan asks, looking to join, how do we know when we're ready? And Tracy, how would you answer that?
You were born ready. It's like it should be a prerequisite to preschool.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. And I'd add that sort of like, if you've got a curiosity about engaging with energy a bit more deeply and sort of moving it. So more than just sort of being aware of it, actually getting in there and beginning to work with it. This is the course where we learn some of those skills so that we can go into foundations, and actually that's the more sort of complete training of the SA thing. But to do that, we actually need some sort of groundwork. And this is the course where we begin to learn those skills of bridging our awareness into things, being able to sort of get into energetic shape and form in the energy world, and then actually begin to start moving it. And that picks up your natural gifts. So what Tracy is saying, that these are natural functions. The more that we do this, it begins. You all have past lives working with energy. You just wouldn't be drawn to this otherwise. It's simply it'd be boring to you. You'd go and do something different. So something in you has some experience, and as you get more into it, it begins to wake up this remembrance of how to work with energy and your own natural capacity. So, you might be particularly aligned with Gaia energy and working with it, or sort of dissolving consciousness patterns, or working with a particular dimension of light, or
I have a real strong sense for Susan. Then from the second that she started speaking about it, that for her water is extremely important, and I get the sense that I have is that for Susan, she she would definitely benefit from like visualizing herself as a drop of water in a huge body of water, and then just becoming like expanding into it. And I get a sense that for Susan, that would like she has some edges that would kind of just dissolve away, and that this could be like almost a daily practice for Susan, and that that would be really extremely nourishing for her. The water would be nourishing.
Very nice. Yeah, that sounds really good to me. I know that she happens to love swimming as well, so I know that on some level that's very true, that she's got this big affinity. Very cool. And she said they're mischievous, the Hawaiian fairies. Yeah, that sounds like fairies to me. They're very mischievous. Yeah, and when you meet fairies, you typically you don't want to eat any of their stuff, and you want to bring a gift. That's just good housekeeping.
Take your shoes off.
Yeah, exactly. That's something that we learn as we begin to explore the energetic realms, is sort of like basic like politeness, because it really is like going to meet someone in their house. You sort of have to you have to be a good ambassador and kind of friendly and open and a bit sort of humble, and rather than ordering someone around like, oh, give me this and heal my liver, as you turn up to someone you don't know and be like, heal my liver. They're going to be like, what? So you need to develop a relationship with these energies, and that relationship is hard. It's sort of like recognizing oneness and coming from a place of sort of appreciation and respect and love. And then we make great friends, and they will come and heal your livers and all sorts of things. So that's sort of partly what we're learning, is sort of gaining an understanding of sort of how to make friends and be sort of friendly on that level of energy, and listen. That's the really key thing, is like, it's not just for you, it's what can you do for them, what and I visited a waterfall. This is a good story. It's playing with me. I visited a waterfall traveling a month ago, and I thought, oh, fantastic, big waterfall, sacred waterfall, great. I'm gonna get some lovely healing, some lovely sort of like cleaning and all this sort of stuff. And I went, and the waterfall was so unhappy. It sort of been, my sense was that because it was very touristy, that they'd done some sort of work to hew out more of the rock face, to sort of open it up and make it look a certain way. And the waterfall was like, the energy and spirit that's there with the land spirit was so unhappy. They just felt totally neglected and sort of brutalized by humanity. And they were not up for offering healing. They were like, when I connected to them, they were unhappy. And so I did what sort of healing I could do to sort of try and fix the situation that needs more sort of healing and work, really. So nature actually needs things from us. It needs sort of a better relationship with humanity, and that's part of the job of people that do sort of take a kind of shamanic path, is to sort of work with that relationship. And we've done a lot of damage to nature consciousness in our history of humanity. So addressing some of that is part of our work as well. And then it's a relationship that we support each other. Okay. Very nice. So Susan asks, I see 6 pods, so they go in hand with 2 classes. So there will be, I think there will be 4 pods. There's 2 for each class, unless I've got that wrong. But there will be pods. So I'll have to check. I have to check what's on the website to make sure I've got the right end of the stick. But so the classes are sort of, will explore certain sort of themes and skills energetically. So we might learn to sort of track emotional energy and clear it, or meet sort of the consciousness, Gaia consciousness in a particular realm and learn to channel that, like the energy of fire or wind or something like that, and for healing. And then in the pods, we would practice those skills in a small group. So after that class, you'd meet with Tracy or myself and a group of maybe 3 students, and you'd work with each other one by one, gradually exploring, okay, how do I bridge my awareness into that emotional sort of people wounding? Okay, now how do I contact and work with that fire energy to sort of help move it? And how do I go deeper with what's there? And in dialogue with Tracy and myself, and give you feedback, pointers, with what you can explore with that particular thing that you're looking at. So it's a way of really getting the eating and digesting the skills that we're going to learn. So we really need to practice this stuff to make it natural and part of us. The workshop plus a bit immersive vibe, and then the pods are sort of really trying to embody it and practice and learn. And you're encouraged to practice with the group outside of pods as well, so you get as much practice as possible. That's one of the really cool things about this course. So I think pods and sort of the whole format of it is really nice. I really enjoyed training. Yeah. And Tracy, you find the pods in pods and running pods for quite a while now.
Yeah, I love pods, and I think it just helps to keep the energy alive and the enthusiasm going and everything between classes. It's really good.
Absolutely, yeah, and you end up exploring wild themes because the thing is that this class is designed to be an introduction, so it's quite we have to be quite tight about the material, but there's so much in the energetic world that you can really sort of, you start pulling these strings and there's all sorts to explore and work with, and pods are a nice place for doing that, so that we've got a bit more sort of personal time to explore what's going on and what we need to be to work with it. Hello. And there's someone else that's joined us in the chat, but I can't see their name. But I can just see it there. So hi to both of you. Hello. Lovely to have you here. So we'll do a Q&A in a week's time, I think, on a Wednesday. And so if there are questions, stick them under, about the course, about other things. Stick them under this video if you're watching it later, and we'll collect them and chat about them next Wednesday. And I think what we'll do is we'll also do some sort of, we will do a live Zoom sort of, we'll do something practical to visit some of these nature spaces together. So we'll do a sort of nature journey, I think maybe in 2 weeks' time. And there'll be an update it'll be announced on the page, and we'll do that there. Yeah, so keep tuned in, and we'll be talking about this a bit more. Yeah, but until then, bye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
Oh, somebody's just asked a question, so we'll address this before we go. Is the course online or in person? So it's online at the moment. Awaken the Shaman and Foundations are online courses. So we meet on Zoom, and then we track into the energy and work with it that way together. So it works quite well. We've been teaching online for, I think, almost 3 years. Even before the pandemic, this course was online. Okay, I'll chat soon. Bye-bye.
Bye now.